Hi guys, Pavi is back with another video. Apologies, it's been a few weeks since my last one. I've been rather busy on the paddle and tennis court and enjoying this unseasonably hot weather that we're getting in the UK at the moment. So it's been a really good summer so far, and I've been trying to take a full advantage of that by playing a lot of sports. So apologies for the delay. I think the last podcast that I did was towards the end of the French Open and how Djokovic was doing, and we can probably just kick off really from then. Djokovic obviously. I felt he had a fantastic French Open. Obviously, he won the 100th title, which was one of his big aims this year. I think he's had two big aims this year. One was to get 100 titles, which he's now done. And the other one, which obviously we will go into this podcast as well, was to get the 25th Grand Slam in 2025. Those are two big kind of objectives, really, aims and hopes that Djokovic would certainly be hoping for this year, and he's already got to one of them by winning Geneva. He went into the French Open with the confidence of winning Geneva, but the fact that he didn't have any rest. So, if we go back to the final on the Saturday, he played a final which lasted over 3 hours against Herbie Hurkacz in Geneva, which Djokovic did go on and win, coming back from a rate down in the final set to turn that around. He then kind of travelled to Paris almost straight away, so he didn't have a week to recover or rest, and he went straight into the French Open, and he looked absolutely amazing because he continued that momentum that he got from Geneva. Obviously, before Geneva, he hadn't won a single match on a clay court. So for those who are saying, well, why did he play Geneva? He had to. He had no choice because he had not won a single match on the clay court. So he needed to get that competitive action under his belt, because that's even more important than the rest part of the requirements that are needed for a slam. And he kind of cruised through the French Open. He beat, in the early rounds, he beat the likes of Corentin Moutet in straight sets. He beat Cam Norrie, who was on form. I think his best performance was really in the quarter-final, where he beat Sasha Zverev in 4 sets. But it's not just the way that he played, it was how he kind of beat Zverev. Zverev, said in the post-match interview that he just didn't know how he could win a point off Djokovic from the baseline. Djokovic was back to his best, really, in terms of his depth. He got a really good victory there. And then obviously was the big match against Jannik Sinner, and he lost that in 3 very tight sets. Was it 6-4, 7-5, 7-6 or something? There was only 5 games in the whole of the match. And it came down to key points. It came down to the kind of break points, which Djokovic couldn't convert. He obviously had break points to win the 3rd set, which he couldn't do. And Sinner was a little bit more clutch on the key points. But I think that goes back to Geneva. Whereas if I consider the performance against Jannik Sinner and that comparison to Zverev a few days before, I felt Djokovic felt a bit leggy in that Sinner game. So he was still playing well, but he just didn't quite have that legs and that energy that's needed in a Grand Slam. For 2 weeks, you've got to be at your highest. And the fact that he made the semi-final, lost narrowly to Jannik Sinner, I think was a really good tournament for him. He then has had 2 weeks of full break. So obviously we're used to now Djokovic not having any kind of grass court competitive action, so to speak, in the last few years. He's gone straight to Wimbledon. No mistake, no changes this year, but the difference this year is he hasn't had knee surgery. So Djokovic, has got so many matches. I think he played 6 at French Open, 4 or 5 at Geneva. He played 10, 11, 12 matches in 2 or 3 weeks. So that gave him the matches that he needs to. He doesn't need to worry about competitive matches. He's got those in the bank now for Wimbledon. But what was important was to rest and recover. And that's what Djokovic has done. He's kind of gone away, kept himself a little bit of a low profile, got himself a new fitness trainer, and was working really hard. He came to Wimbledon 10, 11 days before the start of the tournament, which just shows you how focused and motivated he is. He's come back to Wimbledon. He's been practicing for over a week. He's played a variety of players Male and female. Obviously, he's been hitting with Sabalenka as well, but he's hit with Alcaraz. He's hit with Tsitsipas. He's also played in an exhibition, so he's got a lot of games now on grass. And it doesn't matter so much that they're not competitive, because he's got those competitive games that he had on the French Open in Geneva. So I think for the first time, I think Djokovic, for the first time since 2023, I would say, is in a really, really good position at the moment as we speak on the eve of Wimbledon. He looks happy, he looks healthy. I think his preparation has been ideal. And, in the other slams, I've thought, I don't think he's going to go all the way. But this one, I think, Djokovic has got a really, really good chance of going all the way and winning Wimbledon this year. And I'm going to predict that this year, that he's actually going to go on and win Wimbledon. And for those of you who follow me, I'll call it as it is. A lot of the times in the last 4 or 5 slams I've said I don't think Djokovic can win this slam for X, Y, and Z, but I think he'll do okay. And that's materialised. I don't think I've predicted him to win a slam for maybe a couple of years now. For a variety of reasons, but I think this Wimbledon for me is a really, really good chance. And a lot of things have to happen in slams. Everything has to be perfect for someone to win a slam. Obviously, the biggest one for Djokovic is that he stays fit and he stays healthy during the 2 weeks of Wimbledon. Providing he doesn't get any illnesses or injuries, and obviously he's been blighted with that a little bit in the last kind of 18 months, 2 years. Then I believe he can really go on and win the Grand Slam number 25. I've kind of always said this season that I felt that his 2 biggest chances to get to 25 will be Wimbledon and also US Open. So I think he's got 2 bites at the cherry. I think he's up there, he's 3rd favourite to win both of these slams. So he's there or thereabouts with the bookmakers as well. But this year in particular, I think everything seems to have gone right for him in terms of the preparation. So the Mystic Pav is back, and I believe that Djokovic is going to go on and win the 25th Grand Slam. He needs a lot of luck. He needs everything to fall in his favour, but I believe the preparation that he's done is there. I still believe he's got a high level that is needed to win a Grand Slam. I've seen enough of that in the last few weeks at Geneva and French Open to give me that confidence that he's got that in him and has still got the motivation. So that's kind of where I'm at with Djokovic. If we look at his draw, so I've got the draw in front of me now in terms of what his predicted draw is based on rankings and kind of what he is scheduled to do. Now, a few people have said that it's a relatively straightforward draw. I don't think it's a straightforward draw at all. I think it's a really, really tough draw. Now, if we go into round 1, he's got Alexandra Muller, who's ranked number 40. So he's only just ranked outside of a seed. So that's probably one of the more toughest opponents you can get in round 1, because if you're a seed, which Djokovic is, he's seeded 6, you can't face the player in the top 32. Djokovic's first opponent is only just outside the top 32, so that's not an easy first round. The second one is going to be the winner of Jay Clark and Dan Evans. Now, I've followed Jay Clark and Dan Evans' career, since they've been juniors as well. I'm a big fan of both of theirs as well. So, it's certainly an interesting matchup for me. I think Dan Evans has probably got too much experience for Jay at this stage, especially on Wimbledon, and Dan Evans has hit some form. So I think his likely second round opponent is going to be Dan Evans. Now, you just have to look at Dan Evans on grass in the last week. He's beaten Francis Tiafoe, he's beaten Tommy Paul, both ranked in the top 15. So, he's got, that's not going to be easy. He's going to have, all the British fans supporting him. And, I know Dan Evans had a rough 18 months, but in the last 6 months, he's really worked hard to get back and bring that game that we know that he has. He's already beaten Djokovic, obviously, we know, famously almost Monte Carlo a few years ago. So he knows how to beat Djokovic. So that isn't easy. So that's the first 2 matches. And then we go into round 3. And he's looking at Alex Michelsen. Now, Alex Michelsen has just made the semis of Mallorca. So he is banging on form. He's a top 25 player now, I think he's got in there. He's, he's beaten a lot of top 10 players. He's a very, very good player, very, very comfortable on grass. So that's not easy. And then you go into kind of week 2, providing he comes through these 3 and providing that all the rankings kind of go to kind of form. The next one will be Alex de Minaur. Now, Alex de Minaur, everyone knows in the last 3 years, has been very, very consistent. He consistently makes quarters and semis of many, many events. He's hovering around the top 10. And that's not going to be easy. You know, de Minaur is a good player. He has also beaten Djokovic in the past. So that's not easy. And then you get into the real business end as I look over here. So the next 3, if he was to win Wimbledon and it all went to ranking, are going to be Jack Draper in the quarterfinals, Jannik Sinner in the semi-finals, and Carlos Alcaraz in the final. Can anyone ask for a more tougher draw than that? You know, it's absolutely insane. Jack Draper, one of the most informed players, obviously he won his first Masters this year. As he's consistently going deep in events this year. Jannik Sinner, obviously, you know, he's the world number 1. He's won, you know, 3 slams recently. He's you know, regardless of what I think of him, he's still producing phenomenal results. So that's not going to be easy. And then, of course, Alcaraz, the guy who's beaten Djokovic in the last 2 Wimbledons, the guy who's won the French Open, the guy who's won Queens, the guy who's just sizzling hot. So Djokovic is going to have to go through all of these to win his number 25. And yes, I have taken that into account before my prediction of Djokovic winning. I know how difficult that is going to be, but I still maintain that if Djokovic is at his best, it doesn't matter what the rest do, because I believe Djokovic at his best is better than anyone on this tour, and that still stands even though he is now 38 years of age. So so that's kind of where Djokovic's draw is at. We can talk about other people as well in terms of kind of, you know, where I see they are. We're at Jannik Sinner. I think at the moment, you know, obviously he did a sweetheart deal with WADA for 3 months, which meant he barely missed any tennis events. He didn't miss a single slam. He couldn't have asked for a better settlement than that, but he might have been wishing that he actually got a lot longer suspension. Obviously, we know what happened at the French Open. You know, more and more stuff is coming out from that, and you know, we've heard that Jannik Sinner was in tears after the match, days after the match. He was shocked that he didn't get a good reception. He actually felt that a lot of the fans would be maybe 50-50. You know, he's obviously been given the fans' favourite Player of the Year award by the ATP for the last 2 years. He's obviously surrounded with people that constantly promote him and you know, protect him. So, you know, you get delusions of grandeur and you know, his self-awareness is lacking. I think he lacks that self and social awareness, and he genuinely thought that people would possibly, you know, be 50-50 against with Sinner and Alcaraz, where it turned out to be about 95-5, I would say. It was a very, very Alcaraz pro fan base at Roland Garros. Djokovic had tremendous support against Sinner as well. So, you know, Sinner would have seen that in the semi-final where they were mostly supporting Djokovic. In the final, they were mostly supporting Alcaraz. That apparently hurt him, and that was let out by an Italian journalist. A lot of the people that protect Sinner weren't happy that that came out, but stuff is starting to come out. And just yesterday, obviously, we had the big news that Marco Panici and Ulysses Badio, who were replacements for the disgraced kind of team members that Sinner had sacked during the whole doping scandal, Umberto Ferreira and Giacomo Naudi, they've now already gone. They've already gone, and that is astonishing. You know, any elite player will tell you that the pinnacle of their career is a Grand Slam. They will prepare for this meticulously, not during the whole of Wimbledon, obviously during a Wimbledon, but before as well. Every little thing, every little percentage is measured, it's done meticulously, it's planned. For him to lose 2 team members, 2 important team members on the eve, would suggest that something big has happened. We will probably never find the truth of that because there will be NDAs and they will probably be restricted to be able to talk on the matter, and they probably won't want to talk on the matter for fear of repercussions of doing so. But I can tell you, you know, straight, to lose two members of your team on a day before Grand Slam, something big has happened. And, you know, we can only speculate what could happen. You know, were these two told to do certain tactics or certain processes which they didn't agree to? Had they found out that there were certain processes and things that were doing that shouldn't be done and decided to kind of leave on their own accord? We don't know, but all that we know is that Sinner is not in a good place going into Wimbledon. He obviously lost in Halle to Bublik. You know, he looked a shadow of the player that he was. Obviously, he lost the French Open to Alcaraz, his 5th consecutive defeat against Alcaraz. That starts weighing and playing on your mind. Obviously, he's famously lost 3 consecutive match points, the only player to ever lose 3 consecutive match points in a Grand Slam. Stuff like that hurts. You know, even Darren Cahill said that this could, you know, could live with him and hurt him for the rest of his career. So, you know, I don't think Sinner is in a good place. You know, we've obviously seen that he's like a machine. He doesn't seem to be fazed by a lot, and he just goes ploughing on. But this is going to impact everyone. He's lost half of his team. He's just lost the Grand Slam when it was on the tip of his racket. Really, you know, 3 consecutive goes at winning a Grand Slam and not converting in any of them, and then serve it, and then having the chance to serve it out the very next game, and you couldn't do that either. So, you know, there was a lot of things really that was that will be playing on Sinner's mind. So that's why I don't believe that he will win Wimbledon. I believe he will go deep. He's very, very good, even if he's not at his best. Mentally, he's good enough to make the quarters at a canter, I believe. I think he will go deep, quarters, semis, but I don't think he will win. Now, Alcaraz, for me, is obviously the man on form. He's the one who's won Wimbledon twice, but I don't think his preparation has been ideal for Wimbledon this year, and that's because I think he's going to run out of his legs. He made the final of the French Open and obviously went on to win that in a 4 or 5 hour final. He didn't really have much time to rest. He had, you know, he had a lot of PR and press to do. I think he had a little break away in Ibiza. He came back, and then he was back at Queen's. And then at Queen's, he went on and won that tournament. But he had a lot of really, really tough 3-set matches in there. So he's not had much of a break. He's then come back. He's then back practicing at Wimbledon. All of these kind of tournaments that he's had and the running run, he's not really had that time to let his body completely rest and recover. And I think that will come into play towards the business end of the Grand Slam. So like Sinner, I think he will go deep, but I don't think he will go all the way. If we look at all the other kind of top-ranked players, Zverev, I don't think has got it mentally to win a slam yet. And I don't think grass is ever going to be his best surface. And then you've got, you know, your Medvedevs and your Rublevs and, you know, your Sheltons. And, you know, you've got quite a few people in the top 10 at the moment. Musetti, that I don't feel grass is necessarily their best service, but I don't think these players have got it in them yet to win a slam. So, you know, if Djokovic isn't going to win it, it could be someone like, you know, a surprise that you know, maybe like a Bublik or someone who's good on grass but hasn't won a slam or hasn't got near a slam before. So it could be a shock if Djokovic doesn't win it, but I'm confident in saying that I don't feel that this one will be won by either Sinner or Alcaraz for the reasons that I have stated. So that's kind of where we are. We're on the eve of Wimbledon. You know, for all tennis fans, it's like the night before Christmas today. You know, Wimbledon is the one that, you know, everyone kind of knows, and globally it's the one as a kid where you always watch, and you know, nothing's changed that for me. It's one of my favourite tournaments. You know, I'll be hoping to go down later next week and week 2 as well. So you know, excited for it. As I said, excited for Djokovic, excited for tennis to kind of get back on the headlines for the action, as opposed to what's happening off court at the moment, which is just as crazy as ever. But yeah, looking forward to it. You know, let's see what happens. I think it is quite an open Wimbledon this year on the men's and women's side. It's always open on the women's side, you know, ever since kind of Serena and Venus have stopped playing really at that level. There hasn't really been anyone who's consistently performing well at Wimbledon. So it's a very, very open Wimbledon for the women and for the men this year. Which means it's going to be really, really exciting. So I will be keeping you guys all updated. I'll try and do as many kind of updates and podcasts as the matches go through, previews of Djokovic's matches and summaries of how he does. He's first up against Alexandra Muller. As I said, it's a tough game, but one Djokovic should come through on grass. Muller is not particularly noted for his ability on grass, so I expect Djokovic to come through that in 3 tight sets. But let's see. Wishing you all the very best. Hope you guys are all well. Keep tuned. Keep supporting tennis. We will try and make tennis great again soon. And I think with what the PTPA are doing, in exposing all the kind of badness and corruption in tennis is in the right, is pushing tennis in the right step forward. And I think more and more fans are realising now that it's a corrupt industry, and the more that people talk about it, the more that can be done to make sure that that isn't the case going forward. So God bless to all of you. Hope you guys are all well wherever you are in the world, and looking forward to Wimbledon, and I will catch up with you guys soon. Take care. Bye. Either more.